Welcome back to Compleat Magic. I'm Evan, and this is our first episode of Commanders That Slap. On today's episode, we're going to be going over Toski, Bearer of Secrets, and running him as an elf tribal commander. So you may be thinking, I know it's an indestructible squirrel, what's he doing running an elf deck? I'm going to show you why Toski is the best elf commander out there. Let's go! Alright, let's talk about our commander here. We got Toski, Bearer of Secrets. He's a 1/1 legendary squirrel who costs 3 colorless and 1 green. He can't be countered, and he's also indestructible. Toski, Bearer of Secrets attacks each combat if able. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So that last little bit is super important, and what makes Toski a really great elf commander, because every time you swing in with your elves, every single point of damage to your opponents, you're going to be drawing cards off of it. So I played Elf Tribal for a long time, and the biggest problems I always had is I would play all my elves, and then the board gets wiped, and I have no hand. So Toski, an amazing elf commander. I encourage you to try it out. So much fun. So a little bit of quick stats on the deck. The deck consists of 34 lands, 13 sorceries, 5 instants, 7 artifacts, 4 enchantments, 1 Planeswalker, and 37 creatures. So that adds up to 101, but Bow of Nylea is an enchantment artifact, so I count it twice. So yeah, we're going to get right into it and talk about the creatures first. Like I said, there's 37 creatures. The first category is going to be our mana elves. So first off, we got 3 mana dorks that cost 1 apiece: Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and Finhorn Elves. And they each tap for 1 green. Pretty straightforward there. Next up, we got our more advanced mana elves. We got Canopy Tactician, Elvish Archdruid, and Marwyn the Nurturer. So Canopy Tactician, boost up all your elves +1/+1, and he taps to add 3 green. Pretty good. Elvish Archdruid, he's a 2/2 cost 3. He also boosts up all your elves +1/+1, and taps to add green for each elf you control. This guy can add a lot of mana real quick. And then we got Marwyn the Nurturer. And she has, whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn. And then you can tap her to add an amount of green equal to her power. So once she gets pumped up by Elvish Archdruid, all these other guys, and gets more counters on her, you're going to be adding just so much mana. You're going to have more than enough. And then here we got our last 3 mana producers or generators. We got Wood Elves, Spring Bloom Druid, and Secura Tribe Elder, aka Steve. So all 3 of these are going to get a land onto the battlefield for us, which is the best kind of ramp, and just keep the engine going. So the next category we have is card draw. And first up, we have Fierce Impeth. So when Fierce Impeth enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So he costs 2 colorless, 1 green. He's a 1/1. So kind of a weak creature, but you get to draw a card, and that card is your game ender, like Crater Hoof Behemoth or something. So he actually has won me a couple games. And yeah, I can't understate how much better he is than he looks. Next up, we got Realm Walker, which is a changeling, so counts as an elf. When he enters the battlefield, you'll choose a creature type, elf, obviously. And then you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells, elf creature spells from the top of your library. So not exactly card draw, but you can cast all your elves from the top, which is very helpful and will help you cast a lot of elves in 1 turn. Pretty amazing card. Next, we have Llanowar Empath. Costs 3 colorless and a green for a 2/2. And when he enters the battlefield, scry 2, and then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, put it in your hand. So it's a good way to just pull out an elf out of nowhere from the top 2 cards. Yeah. Next up, we got Beast Whisperer. Costs 2 colorless, 2 green. It's a 2/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This can get you drawn so many cards because you're going to be playing a lot of elves, and he's invaluable. So this next category we have are creatures that perform single targeted removal. So our removal guys. First up, we got Reclamation Sage. He's a 2 colorless, 1 green, 2/1. When he comes in, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then we got Masked Vandal. Kind of does a similar thing, but costs 1 and a green. He's a changeling, so he's an honorary elf, 1/3. When he enters the battlefield, I can exile a creature card from the graveyard and then exile target artifact or enchantment. So you're going to have a creature in the graveyard more than likely because it's a heavy creature deck. So essentially it's bring them in, exile artifact or enchantment. That's really good. And next up we got Jagged Scar Archers. Cost 1 colorless, 2 green. His power and toughness are equal to the number of elves you control. And then you can tap and deal damage equal to his power to target creature with flying. So this guy can just shoot flyers out of the sky like it's this job. And he can actually get really big. If you got 10 elves down, he's a 10/10. He can get pretty huge. And then lastly in this category, we got Silklash Spider. Costs 3 colorless, 2 green. He's a 2/7 with reach. So he can block some pretty big flyers. But he has the ability to pay X and 2 green, and he deals X damage to each creature with flying. So he can essentially be a repeatable nuke to all the small flyers, even big flyers, because you have lots of mana in this deck. And that's why I chose him. He's not an elf, but spiders live in the woods too, right? So next up, we got our token generators. So first off, we got Dwynen's Elite. It's a 1 colorless, 1 green elf, 2/2. And when Dwynen's Elite enters the battlefield, if you control another elf, make a 1/1 elf token. Pretty simple. 2 elves for 1. Imperious Perfect. Costs 2 colorless and a green for a 2/2. Boost up all your other elves, +1/+1, and you can tap a green and tap her to make a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So you can essentially do that every turn. Just keep pumping out elves. Next up, we got Elvish Warmaster. Costs 1 colorless and a green. Whenever 1 or more elves enter the battlefield under your control, make a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. But only happens once each turn. But this is good because it says when 1 or more elves enter the battlefield. So you could pair this up with something like Imperious Perfect and be cranking out 2 tokens every time that you use Imperious Perfect's ability. And Elvish Warmaster also has pay 5 colorless, 2 green, and elves you control get +2/+2 and gain Death Touch until end of turn, which is pretty good if you're trying to swing in to either do a lot of damage or draw a lot of cards from Toski. Next up, we got Lys Ilana Huntmaster. 2 colors, 2 green for a 3/3. Whenever you play an elf spell, make a 1/1 green elf warrior. So she doubles up all the elves you're playing, and that can get real silly real quick. Next, we got Wolverine Riders. So this is one of the more expensive elves, if not the most expensive elf, at 4 colorless, 2 green for a 4/4. But at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. And then whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, gain life equal to its toughness. So 1 trip around the table, you're making 4 1/1 elves, gaining 4 life at the minimum. Provides a lot of value, and they're going to have to deal with them, or you're going to have an overwhelming elf army in the matter of a couple turns. So next up, we got our utility elves. So these are just good elves that provide some value. First up, we got Tajru Blight Blade. Don't make me say that name again. He's a 1 green first cost. He's a 1/1 Death Toucher. Very straightforward. Just has Death Touch, but pump him up a little bit. No one's blocking him. And we got Elvish Vanguard. Costs 1 colorless and a green for 1/1. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on him. Notice it doesn't say cast. So you're making tokens, you're pumping this guy up, and he's going to be your beater. Then we got Sylvan Advocate for 1 colorless, 1 green. He's got Vigilance, and he's a 2/3. As long as you control 6 or more lands, he gets +2/+2, and he's a 4/5 with Vigilance. So that's really good value for just paying 2 mana. Yeva Nature's Herald, 2 colorless, 2 green for a 4/4 with Flash, and gives all your other green creature spells Flash. So you can start flashing in elves out of nowhere and just build an army without your opponents having the ability to stop it. Then we got Immaculate Magistrate, 3 colors and a green for 2/2, and you tap her to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature for each elf you control. So this has been a card that I found super helpful in this deck because you can just pump up Toski when you have a bunch of elves, and Toski can easily become a 10/10 in no time and be extremely scary. So then we got Jiraga Warcaller, costs 1 green, it's 1/1. Basically, you can pay this multi-kicker any number of times, and he enters with that many +1/+1 counters on him. And then other elf creatures you control get a +1/+1 counter for each +1/+1 counter on Jiraga. So let's say you pay 5 mana into this guy. He's going to come in as a 1/1 with 2+1/+1 counters on him, and all your elves get +2/+2. So he's really good early game, extremely good late game when you could pay 11 and then drop him down with 5+1/+1 counters on him, and all your elves get +5/+5. Really good card. Then we got Dwynen Guildleaf Dane. Costs 2 colors, 2 green for a 3/4 with reach. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. And then when she attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking elf. So it's a reach elf that can block flyers, a lord, pumps up all your elves, and you get life every turn. Yeah, sign me up. And then lastly for this category, we got Azuri, Renegade Leader. He used to be my old elf commander. He costs 1 colorless, 2 green for a 2/2. You can pay 1 green and regenerate another elf, or pay 5 total, and all your elves get +3/+3 and trample. And you can do that multiple times. So into the game, when you got 10 mana, you could give them all +6/+6 and trample. He's a good game ender. So for this next category, we got 3 creatures that basically help you get through, help with evasion. First up, we got Champion of Lamholt. Champion Lamholt's cost 1 colorless, 2 green for 1/1. Creatures with power less than Champion Lamholt's power can't block creatures you control. And when another creature comes into play under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion. So you play a couple creatures, Champion gets pumped up, and all your creatures are unblockable. You drawing cards. Now we got Sereth the Viper's Fang. Costs 2 colors, 2 green for a 3/4. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch, and other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. So the elves you want to attack are attacking with Death Touch. No one's going to want to block them and draw cards. And then the ones you don't want to attack, who are providing a ton of value, have Hexproof. Just such a good card. And then Bellowing Tangleworm costs 3 colorless, 2 green for a 4/4 with Intimidate. Other green creatures you control have Intimidate. So that means only artifact creatures or green creatures can block your elves. So they're going to be getting through. And the last category we have is our big boys. First up, we got Bigger. Costs 6 total for a 6/6 with Trample. If damage be dealt to a creature you control, prevent all that damage and put a +1/+1 counter on it for each 1 damage prevented. And then when it's put in the graveyard, shuffle it into your library. So essentially, when you're swinging out with 10 elves, if they block your elves, they just get bigger. So they're not going to want to block your elves. Or if they do, your elves are going to get swole. Next up, we got Regal Force. Costs 7 total for a 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each green creature you control. So when you play this card, typically you're going to have at least 5 elves. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Help refill your hand, even if you can't get through with Toski. Great card. And then lastly, we have the legend himself, Craterhoof Behemoth. Cost 8 for a 5/5 with haste. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So in this deck with elves, going wide strategy, typically you're going to play Craterhoof, and then you just win. All your elves are going to be +10/+10 or something, and game over. Call it a wrap. You can go home. You're the champ. Craterhoof's awesome. Here we go. We're going to go over the instants and sorceries in this deck. And we're going to start off with Ramp. Ramp's so important, and we're in green, so we're going to be including Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. Both of them are 3-drops. They do the same thing. Go search your library for 2 basic lands. Put 1 on the battlefield tapped and 1 in your hand. And we're also going to include Rampant Growth, 2-drop. Search your library for basic land, put it in tapped. And Collective Voyage. This is an interesting card. You have Join Forces, so starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana. Each player searches his or her library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way, and puts them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffles. So if you yourself decide to tap a couple, add a couple mana, then everybody's going to get 2 lands. But you're going to be casting lots of elves, so this can really help you build your army fast. So next up, we got card draw. And we're going to start off with Adventure Awaits and Lead the Stampede. So they do similar things. Adventure Awaits lets you look at top 5 cards, reveal a creature card, and put it in your hand. Lead the Stampede lets you look at the top 5 cards, and you can reveal any number of creature cards and put them in your hand. So Lead the Stampede's strictly better, because you might see 2 or 3 elves in there, but costs 1 more mana to cast. Return of the Wild Speaker. So this one's 5-drop. and you can draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or you can give a +3/+3 boost to everybody. So this is actually a dual-purpose card. It can help you swing in for a win with that +3/+3, but also draw a lot of cards. And I know we're going wide here, so it seems like it wouldn't make the most sense to draw cards equal to greatest power, but I found that more than likely you have a creature with power at least 4 or 5. So more than likely you're going to be drawing at least 4 or 5 cards off of this with one of your pumped up elves. Next we got Harmonize. 4-drop, draw 3 cards. Real simple, help refill your hand. Shamanic Revelation. 5-drop, draw a card for each creature you control. So I don't even think I really need to explain why this is good in an elf deck. You're going to have lots of elves. You're going to draw a lot of cards. And Kindred Summons. It's not strictly card draw, but this will win you the game. Sometimes. It's a 7-drop. Choose a creature type, elves. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures you control of that type. Put those cards on the battlefield, then shuffle the rest in your library. So yeah, if you have, let's say, 7 elves down, which seems like a very reasonable number, you get to reveal cards from the top until you reveal 7 elves and put them on the battlefield. You can develop such an overwhelming board state so quick, it's not even funny. So next up, we have some removal. We got your standard Beast Within, 3-drop, destroy target permanent, then make a 3/3 beast. And then we got some fight cards. Epic Confrontation for 2. Target creature you control gets +1/+2 and then fight someone. And that's gonna be pretty easy to do because you're gonna have some pumped up creatures. Inscription of Abundance does a similar thing, but you got more options. You can choose one of them, or if you pay the kicker, you can choose any number. So you can choose all 3. So the options are put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control, and target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So you could have them fight, put counters on them, or gain life. Then we got Nature's Claim, 1-drop, destroy target artifact enchantment. Controller gains 4 life, great artifact or enchantment removal. And this is one of my favorite new removal cards, newer, Pest Infestation. Costs X in a green, and destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. And then create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So in this deck, we're going to have lots of mana, so it's very easy to assume that you might have 7, 9 mana to be able to destroy 3 or 4 artifacts or enchantments, and then make 6 or 8 pests. So this just gives you a huge payoff and kind of helps swing things, because we have lots of overrun effects too. So you put out 8 pests, that might help you win the game if your next play is a Greater Hoof. And then we have Hurricane. So I mentioned earlier, flyers are a problem for this deck because we don't have flying elves, but we do have access to a Hurricane. Hurricane deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player. Costs X in the green. And yeah, just nukes all the flyers out of the air and tries to keep them on land with the elves. Let's battle on land. Then our last instant or sorcery is Overrun. It's a 5 cost. All your creatures get +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. It's going to help you swing in for the win. Probably said that 15 times now, but that's the goal. Get these elves out, pump them up, and swing in for the win, baby. And so we actually have one Planeswalker in this deck, and that is Freylease, Llanowar's Fury. It's a 5-drop. Comes in with 3 loyalty, and its +2 loyalty ability is create a 1/1 green elf druid that taps for 1 green mana. Its -2 is destroy target artifact or enchantment, and its -6 is draw a card for each green creature you control. So all 3 of these options are incredible in this deck. You can pump out little mana dork elves, you can destroy something on the board that's encumbering you, and you can draw a bunch of cards with its ultimate. So just a really good Planeswalker for this deck. All right, let's talk about the artifacts and enchantments in this deck. So first off, we got Font of Fertility. It's a 1-drop enchantment, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice it, and go get a basic land. Put it in the battlefield tapped. Next, we got Soul Ring, the staple, tap to add 2 colorless mana. Rona's Monument is a 3-drop, green creature spells are going to cost 1 less, so pretty much every elf we have is going to cost 1 colorless less to cast. And whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. And that's huge because you can make that creature Toski. So drop a bunch of elves down, give Toski a bunch of extra power and toughness and trample for the turn, and swing in for big damage. So next up we got Herald's Horn. It's a 3-drop. You're going to choose elves, obviously, and make sure elves cost 1 colorless less also. But additionally, at the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top card of your library, and if it's a creature card of the chosen type, elf, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. So that's going to help you get a little extra card draw occasionally and make your elves cheaper. Lifecrafter's Bestiary. This is a card I like putting in all my green decks. Unless you scry 1 at the beginning of each of your upkeep every turn. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, you can pay 1 green and draw a card. So in this deck, you're going to have plenty of mana, more than likely. So if you only have a couple elves to put down, you can pay a couple green and draw a couple cards. It's pretty strong. So this next set of enchantments and artifacts, they're going to help us swing through and get some damage in. The first one's Bow of Nylea. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. It's a 3-drop legendary enchantment artifact. And if you tap 1 colorless, 1 green, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. You can have Bow of Nylea deal 2 damage to target creature with flying, or gain 3 life, or you can put up to 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. So that's a mouthful. More than likely, you're going to be using that ability to put a counter on Toski or on Morrowind or something like that. So here we got Lure, 3-drop. All creatures able to block enchanted creature do so. So older card. I used to really like this card back in the day. Basically, you can attach this to Toski, let all your elves swing in, draw 1,000,000 cards, or you can attach this to someone who's got Death Touch. So many options. So good in this deck. Rancor, it's the staple 1-drop, gives them +2 power and trample, and it keeps coming back because it goes back in your hand if it goes in the graveyard. Throne of the God Pharaoh. So this basically just helps you end the game quicker. Beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. So you're going to be swinging out with elves a bunch. You're swinging out with 10 elves. You're going to be doing 10 damage to each opponent at the end of your turn. So yeah, just another way to kind of finish things out. And then here's our 1 board wipe in the deck. We got Nevinral's Disc. 4-drop, comes in tapped. Tap 1 colorless and Nevinral's Disc and destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So we only have 1 board wipe because we kind of want that overwhelming board state. We don't want to be wiping the board. But if something goes wrong, we're just going to nuke everybody. And this last one, World Slayer, this is a little bit of a controversial one because I think it's kind of a funny way to win. Very unique. It's a 5-drop artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than the World Slayer. And it's got equip 5. So you can actually equip this to Toski, and if you can get through with them, everything gets destroyed except Toski and World Slayer, and that includes lands. So it's just a squirrel with a giant sword that nukes everything. And I think it's hilarious, and it probably would make some people mad, but I love it. All right, and last up, we're going to talk about the lands. We got 34 lands in this deck, and 29 of them are forests. So we got 5 non-forests. The first one we're going to talk about is Boseiju, Who Endures. This is a new card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's you can just tap it for a green, so it's basically a forest, but you can also use its channel ability, pay 1 colorless, 1 green, and discard Boseiju, and destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle. And it costs 1 less for each legendary creature you control. So if you got Toski out, 1 green, destroy artifact, enchantment, or a pesky Cabal Coffers. Yes, please. Next up, we got War Room, which is one of my favorite lands of all time. Because you can just tap it, add a colorless, like a normal land does. But you can also tap 3 and tap it and pay 1 life because we're mono green. and draw a card. So it seems pretty basic, almost not exciting, but when you get in those scenarios where you need to draw a card, it's really helpful to have that access from a land. So next up, we got Tranquil Thicket. Enters the battlefield tapped. Just adds 1 green mana, but you can also cycle it for a green. So I feel like it's good to have at least 1 cycle land in here, in case we are just like, we got enough lands. Let's get some elves. Colony Territory. So this is one of the cards that functions as a land and as a spell. As a land, it just comes in tapped, adds a green. But on the flip side, you got Colony Ambush, and costs 2 colorless, 1 green. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So another form of removal that comes as a land also. Amazing. And we got another one just like it. And we got Bala Ged Sanctuary. Bala Ged Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped. Adds 1 green mana. But the flip side, 2 colorless, 1 green. You can return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So if there's a really good card that got countered or something that you want to get back, that Crater Hoof that's in your graveyard, you can go get it. Really good utility card. All right, this section is called Gotta Have 'Ems because these are the top 10 cards from the deck. I feel like if you're building a Toski Elf Tribal deck, you need to have, because they are going to make the deck function. They're going to get you wins and force you to have a lot of fun. So number 1, we're going to go with Azuri Renegade Leader. And these are in no particular order. These are just 10 cards that I feel like you should have. Azuri, he's going to let you regenerate your elves, keep them from dying. He's going to be able to overrun them. It just fits so well with what this deck is trying to do. Number 2, Beast Whisperer. You can be drawing cards for every elf. How can you not love that? I love drawing cards so much. It's my favorite mechanic. Number 3, Elvish Warmaster. He's going to make elf tokens like crazy just out of nowhere. He only costs 2 to put down. And for 7, you can give everybody Death Touch and pump them. Just provides so much value for a 2-drop. Number 4, we got Marwyn the Nurturer. She can get real silly once you start playing elves, pumping up elves with your elf lords, and she's going to give you all the mana you need to do anything. And that goes into number 5, Elvish Archdruid. Does a very similar thing, going to give you a ton of mana and pump everybody. Very good value for a 3-drop. So now we got number 6, going away from creatures, we got Shamanic Revelation. This lets you draw a card for each creature you control. It's like this card was made for this deck because you're going to control a lot of creatures, and this is going to help you just amass an enormous hand. And more often than not, you actually hit the Ferocious because you'll have your elves pumped up. A lot of times you'll actually gain a lot of life from this as well. So number 7, we have Cultivate / Kodama's Reach. We're playing green. These are 2 of the best ramp cards ever made. Going to help you get to that casting cost to be able to play your commander and then put down another land the turn after. So for number 8, we got Freylease. This Planeswalker was made for this deck. It does everything you want. Makes elves, removes stuff, and draws cards. Gotta have it. Number 9, Bow of Nylea. This card has given me so many victories because all your elves get Death Touch. No one wants to block a 1/1 Llanowar elf that has Death Touch. Trust me. And it's hard to remove. Harder than a creature, at least. Number 10, Rona's Monument. This is going to discount all your elves. So you're going to be able to put down more elves per turn. And you're going to be able to start giving things trample and pump them up. This card is deceptively good over the game. So we're going to talk about the deck stats here and kind of go over how this deck is put together and how much of each kind of category it has. So as far as creatures in the tribe, we got 28. 28 elves in this deck. Seems like a good number. We got 9 non-elves, which could seem a little high, but we already went over them. They have so much utility, it's hard to take any of those out. 28 elves plus some that create elf tokens. You're going to have enough elves. Next to that, we got card draw. We got 11 forms of card draw. And some of these categories are a little hard to calculate in this kind of deck because we have cards like Realm Walker, which I counted as card draw, which isn't specifically card draw, but it still is card advantage, kind of functions the same way. But 11's pretty good, especially because Toski provides card draw from the commander slot. We got plenty of ways to refill our hand if Toski gets removed and all our elves, just to keep the swarm coming. Then we got ramp, 13 forms of ramp. And this is 13, and I counted each mana dork as half a form of ramp. So there's so much ramp in this deck, and I think it's very important too, because the goal of this deck is to get down a lot of creatures real fast and start overwhelming our opponents. And we need mana to do that. We need mana to cast 4 or 5 elves in one turn. So this ramp's necessary. Single targeted removal. I got it in here as 11 and a half. And that half is coming from Silklash Spider. He can nuke flyers, but it's not like you more than likely can't play Silklash and then nuke all the flyers unless it's like late game. So half a form of removal. But this is a pretty solid number. You know, we're looking for probably at least 10 forms of removal, and we got it here. A lot of it is focused on enchantments and artifacts, which for this kind of deck is a lot of times your biggest issue. Someone plays a propaganda or something, need to be able to take care of that. And we have 1 board wipe in here. The Veneral's Disc. If we need to just nuke everything. Having 2 or 3 board wipes didn't really seem necessary. This deck just keeps coming. We don't want to wipe our elves away. And overrun effects, we got 3.5. So once again, we got that half coming from Elvish Warmaster. His ability where you got to pay 7, gives all your elves +2/+2 and Death Touch. It's kind of like an overrun effect. More than likely, you're either going to wipe out someone's entire board, or they're just not going to be able to block a lot of your guys. So typical overrun effect gives them trample. So that's what the other 3 cards do. But giving everybody +2/+2 and Death Touch has a pretty similar effect. All right, I hope you enjoyed the deck tech video. I know Toski is one of my favorites. If you did enjoy this video, enjoyed the content, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. We're a new channel, but we're growing, and we'd really appreciate the support. Comment below what commander you want to see us do next, and also comment below if there's any cards we may have missed. So, thanks again, and have a good one.